thanks for doing this, first of all. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you taking the time out. Um, Usually, when people come on, I talk to them about kind of briefly like skirt through coffee and move on to other things, but I feel like we're going to dwell there for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, you have what I can see it over your shoulder, but you have like what I would consider an iconic coffee setup.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so Steve Fawcett from JST was at your house like about 2 months ago or whatever, and he just put up a picture, and I could just see the corner of a cup, and I replied, and I was like, Fraser's house, and he was just like, how the fuck did you know that? I was like, that setup's iconic. Like that's
Yeah.
you see that a lot. I was curious about your first coffee. Did you drink coffee like growing up, or was it something that you found when you were like mid 20s, late 20s?
No, no, I definitely drank it growing up. Um, and it wasn't until probably mid 20s that I realized how bad the coffee was that I was drinking. I specifically remember the first cup of good coffee I ever had, and by good I mean like the actual coffee itself was good. It wasn't
Mm.
just like a delicious sugary drink. I've obviously had those. Um, but it was O'Keefe, Sammy, and I were all over in Australia, and their breakfast game
Oh
is
yeah.
second to none. And ordered. I was like, hey, can I get just a coffee? And they were like, what do you mean? And so I got a what they called a long black, and it was just like equal parts espresso and water, like basically an Americano, not
Yeah, yeah.
quite as diluted down. And I remember taking a sip and I asked the waitress, I was like, "What is this?" Like, and she was like, "What are you talking about? It's coffee." And it was just like it was just a flavor profile that I'd never had before. And I was under the impression that, espresso was basically like just condensed coffee. And then in that moment realized like, oh, that's not it at all. And so
Mm.
as I got home from that trip and was really looking into, you know, a good home espresso setup and had no idea where to start. I didn't know what was good, what was bad, and got linked up with a guy who was super helpful. He was a distributor for Rocket,
Right.
he basically put a kit together for me. Um, and like I had to purchase it, and oof, it was tough to justify. Especially like I don't know if I'm even going to enjoy this.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember he sent me links for like the espresso machine, grinder, scale, cups, the everything that went with it, the whole kit. And I remember saying like, hey, like I'll just buy the coffee machine. Like I already have a grinder, and it was like a $20 grinder off Amazon. And I was like, I don't need the scale. It's $200. I can't swing that. And thankfully, he was like, no, you need all of these other things. And so, like had that for years. It was served its purpose really well, but then I wanted to get more involved in it and have kind of more control over all the variables. And so that's when I got the Lamarzico GS3. I got the MP, so it's a manual paddle, so you can play with the pressure. It's just another variable that you can toss in. But then the grinder I started with was super jolly, just a brute of a grinder. But then this other grinder is really cool. It connects to an app, and so through the Marzico, I have a espresso subscription, so different coffee beans every month. And the the really good thing about it is it comes with a recipe card of like, hey, so dose 19 grams, look for a
Okay.
30-second pull, you're going to extract 35 grams. Like it gives you the recipe that they've already figured it out for that bean, so you're not having to play around with it. But this new grinder has that integrated into it, so you download the app and they have like all the different beans they've tested. So whatever bag of beans you buy, you can look it up
Fuck.
in the app, and there's recommendations on how to pull it. So super super cool. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I got into early on, and it's really really tough to justify because it's a big investment cost.
Yeah.
But then once you're hooked, you're like, oh, okay, this is like you're starting your day with a smile every morning. Like it's just like coffee better than you can get from any local shop, and it's like a handcrafted treat every single morning.
Yeah, I see. We have like you're talking about controlling variables. I can control like zero variables on my machine. So I have a Sage Barista. I think you have it's like the Breville. It's like the really common Breville one you see around
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
States, I think. So yeah, I get like all I watch is a needle because if I time it, no point. If I look, I can't control the pressure, so I'm just looking at the needle to make sure it's in the range or whatever. And some like if you get, I'm just thinking of your grinder. If I get a new bag of coffee, I could go through like 7, 8 goes before I'm like, okay, I'm getting close to right now. Because you change, then you're like, oh, I've fucking overcorrected, and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's really frustrating.
Well,
Like,
so that happened with my first machine. Got the machine, got it all set up, and it's like it it's cool too because it's like a showpiece. It's a feature in your kitchen.
yeah,
They're beautiful. And I remember I went to the local coffee roaster, and I think I got two pounds of coffee and get them back, and I'm like, oh, this coffee is going to be perfect. It's a beautiful machine, great grinder, and first shot, and it was like battery acid. And so I'm like, oh, like can't it hurts to put in your mouth.
the
And
machine's broken.
and well, I was like, oh, there must be something inside the tank for when this
Yeah,
machine's sitting on the shelf for however long. And
yeah,
uh, and I did it again and again and again. And by the end of it, like I went back to the store, got two more bags of coffee, and I'm like 4 pounds of coffee in, and like you're getting good coffee, it's 18, $20 a bag. And I'm like, dude, I'm 70, $80 in so far, and I'm gotten shit for coffee. And I finally went back to the roaster, and I was walked into the roasting room, and I was like, hey, I like I've gone through 4 bags of this already. What am I doing wrong? And he was like, oh, well, what's it taste like? I'm like, it tastes like a battery. It feels like I'm taking a sip out of a car battery. Like what? And he was like, what are you dosing? I was like, 16 grams. He was like, try 17. And I left, and I was all upset. I'm like, yeah, thanks a lot, buddy. Great input. And sure enough, get home, put an extra gram of coffee. Like a gram of coffee is like a couple beans, maybe. Totally different flavor. It was like it went from undrinkable to delicious, and that's when like the emphasis on how important all those little variables are.
oh yeah.
I was like, oh shit, 1 gram of coffee made the difference between can't even pretend to enjoy it to like this is an amazing cup of coffee.
Yeah, I remember I did like a home coffee like workshop thing once, and they did like a coffee cupping at
Mm,
it, and they set up all these cups. And they didn't tell us what was in any of the cups, and they were like number them, and then you had to number them by your favorite. But then there's something else you had to fill in like what you could taste on each
hmm.
one or something. I am shit at like I like other people were like, oh, blueberries, and I was like, coffee. And then the next thing they were like, oh, raspberries. I was like, coffee again. Like nice coffee,
I've
but it's coffee.
I've definitely had those instances where like you look at the bag and they have all the flavor profiles, and then yeah, I'm wondering, I'm like, were they just throwing random fruits on here?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh, good taste of plums. I'm like, what? How did you get that?
Yeah, yeah. It tastes like an African coffee. It just
Yeah.
tastes like coffee. But yeah, then at the end there was three. I remember it was like 11, 12, and 13 the cups, and they tasted like absolute shit, like so bad
Yeah.
of shit. Like it cut, like you were because all the way along you were getting such a nice treat, and
Yeah.
every time I was like, oh fuck, I don't know what it tastes like, but it tastes nice. And then it was like, oh wow, that's even better than the last one. And they deliberately made them get better and better. And then like 11 was fucking Maxwell House or something,
Mm.
and like you were like sipping it and you were like, what the fuck is that? They
Yeah.
were like, you know, it was just horrible. And then the next one was,
Like
I think actually 11
Folgers
was
or
like
something.
Starbucks. The next one was Costa, and the last one was Maxwell House. And it just got progressively worse. And they were like, oh yeah, it's because it's a darker roast. And they were explaining all the differences. And I was just like, well, I'm never having a coffee from any of those places
Yeah.
again. It was decided
Yeah.
there
I
and then.
remember like moving into my first dorm, like living on your own, and like bought like I went to the grocery store and I just bought like a giant plastic tub of Folgers. I was like, yeah, that's the coffee everyone drinks. And I remember making a cup, and I was like, I can't drink. This is so bad. I can't even choke it down. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember my dad used to get me to make him coffee in the evenings when he was a farmer, and when he come in, he'd say like, "Oh, make me a cup of coffee." And I can't remember what happened, but I remember I was pissed off at him for something, and I don't know what it was. So I made him. He used to always drink Maxwell House, and I remember putting 7 teaspoons of like the Maxwell House in. He didn't even fucking notice. I was so like or like part of me thinks like he did. It was just like, I'm fucking not.
Yeah,
giving
he's
him
like, I'm not going to
pleasure
give you the gratification.
He's like gritting his teeth and just necking it. Like, yeah. So moving on to podcast then. So you were on with Sivan and Matt for a long time, and I remember one story in particular that you guys talked about that stood out for me was you were talking about like bad podcast experiences. I think it was like Josh brought it up, and you were kind of echoing. You both kind of more or less said the same thing of like, I suppose you kind of fall into a trap of niceness, maybe, of just being like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, and then anticipating everyone is going to put in a similar amount of effort, I suppose. But like, yeah, I suppose those instances, I'm assuming, are getting, apart from, obviously this is the exception, but I'm assuming those instances are getting less and less, and it's getting to, there's a certain standard being met before you're on, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple things into that, like I've listened to podcasts with friends, and there's the host's job, and some people just aren't good at generating conversation, or filling dead space, whatever it is. So there's that. I think the big thing too is just the mood of the person getting interviewed. Um, and if you do a podcast and you just happen to be in a bad, but like you had an interaction 3 minutes before you went live, it can really, really affect the conversation. And then it's kind of unfortunate that, that spotlight, that little flash of that person's life that the public is getting to see, their, I'm trying to think how to word this. It's their mood at the moment is what's getting reflected as their personality. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, if somebody's just in a bad mood for an hour and then it's recorded, and then people just assume, oh, that's how they are all the time. Um, so, there's a couple different things like that. But and then there's the side of the conversation for the person getting interviewed. Some people just aren't good at, you ask a question expecting a conversation, you just get a yes or no answer in return, and it's kind of like,
Yeah, I've been there.
all right, well, I guess we'll move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's just like sliding your finger down the list, be
Yeah,
like, please God, let one of these jump
yeah.
out. Were you surprised with Matt, Josh, and Savan, like how much it took off, and how, like, because there was kind of like an episode, and then after another while there was another episode, and then all of a sudden it was just like, well, from my viewpoint, basically everyone was talking about it really quickly.
Yeah, no, I wasn't really surprised by it. I consider the three of us fun people. We're all interesting in our own ways. And Savan is great at what he does. He is great at creating conversation. And he's not afraid to talk about things that are controversial, but it's a lot of the stuff that people are interested in hearing about. So Savan's great at what he does. And Josh is legit one of the funniest people and has some incredible life experiences that contribute to great conversation. So I wasn't really too surprised to see that, it went well. It just became a matter of lining up all three of
Yeah.
our schedules at once. It got really, really difficult. Especially once Josh is in one time zone, I'm in another, Savan's in another. And then, Josh and I just have so many different projects going on.
Mhm.
So it's just trying to coordinate all these different aspects of your life. It just got to the point that it just wasn't as enjoyable. But it was a
Yeah.
lot of fun while it lasted.
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody suffered with, like, I know Matt is still, or Josh is still with him, and then he's got his own show
Yeah.
that's like just fucking blown up huge as well. One of the projects that I assume you were working on throughout is your book.
Yeah.
So I am not a reader. So I'm a teacher, so I should be, because I'm always saying to the kids like, oh, it's really, really important that you read.
Yeah.
And then they're like, do you read? And I'm like, it's really important that you read.
Do you want to end up like me?
Yeah. I'm what you don't want to be. If you can't do, teach. So I'm about halfway through. So I made a commitment this year that I was going to read a book a month, and I've read a half of 2 books, and we're halfway through February. So I need to finish off the 2. See, I was reading another book, and then this one came, and I was like, "Oh fuck it! I like this looks
Yeah.
this looks more interesting." So I'll read this one, and then now I'm halfway through that one. But yeah, I've the pressure's on now to the end of February. February's a short month as well.
I'll check in on you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. I was curious, like the process of writing it. So I suppose first of all, like, did Spencer approach you? Is this something that you knew you wanted to do and you were looking for someone to work with, or how did it all initiate, I guess?
Huh. That's actually a good question. I don't, I want to say maybe Spencer reached out to me first. I've known Spencer for years now. He's
Mm.
always kind of been in the space. I've done, um, I've done a lot of articles with him, and he was somebody that early on did an article, and you know, I love the end product. And so it was any time after that, he was like, "Hey, I'm doing a write up for Men's Health, or I'm doing write up for whatever publication." And as soon as he asked, I was like, "Yeah, like you're so enjoyable to work with. You're great at what you do." That it wasn't really much of a question, and there was a lot of
Mm.
trust there. And so when this offer came up, uh, and Spencer was willing to help with it, I was like, yeah, like the trust is there. I'm all in. And so that obviously just nonstop phone calls, but then he came when we lived in Tennessee. I think he came and stayed with us for a week or so, and it we just sat at the kitchen table, and he put a recorder in the middle of us, and it was basically like 4 or 5 days of just all day, just telling stories, going through like basically just a live dialogue back and forth, but from like sun up to sundown. I remember like at the end of day one, it was a good conversation. You look at your clock and you're like, holy shit, it's already 5 p.m. Um, but then it was just like your throat is sore and you're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I've been talking for 8 hours. Um, and then basically we do that and he just has a 40 hours worth of me just talking nonstop, and he puts it all on paper, and then we kind of go back and forth of reading, doing the revisions, trying to pick up all the errors that you can so it before it goes to final print. But yeah, it was a longer process than I thought, and then especially once I handed it off, once all the onto paper was done, and then we handed it off, and then it was kind of like just out of your hands for quite a while until the publisher is like, "Hey, here's your finished copy. Here you go." And you're like, "Okay, let's do it."
Was it an enjoyable
Oh,
process? Like, are
very,
you,
very
because
enjoyable. And it was,
would you classify yourself as a nostalgic person? Like,
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah,
yeah.
very, very much so. Um, yeah, so it was a really, really enjoyable process. I think in the swing of it, it was kind of nerve-wracking, um,
Mm.
because I'm thinking like like who's going to read this, who, like, what do they want to hear me talk about, or what do they want to read
Mm.
about, what aspect of my life. And then there's just always that self-doubt of like, man, like who's going to want to read this, like I must think I'm special that I'm writing a book about
Yeah.
myself. um but then and then the immediate feedback of just people raving about it, and like immediately being like, we want more. And the book itself, there's so many different things covered, um, that almost immediately after like the pre-sale, and once people started getting their hands on the copies, and getting that feedback was really, really encouraging. So now I'm just like, okay, I'm just collecting all the data, all the feedback to see what parts people loved, what parts people didn't care for, what parts people didn't like. And we both, Sam and I both have this experience now of going through the process. Like Sammy's book is coming
Yeah.
out shortly.
Two authors in the house.
Yeah, and so we've both gone through the process now, and and I don't think for either of us it's a one and done scenario. This is like anything else where,
Yeah.
all right, we did our first crack at it. I would say for both of us, it was a great success, but we're both walking away from it of, all right, how can we do the next one better? You know, and so we're
Mm.
just collecting that data of like, all right, for the next one, how can we do an even better job? You know, what and give customers, fans, end users the best experience. So it's been fun. It's been interesting hearing the feedback. So I'm excited for. I'm excited for you to finish. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. But uh,
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm halfway through and I fucking love it because I think it's like I feel like it's written for someone like me who maybe doesn't like I think it bridges the gap between someone who's like I read a book every like 8 days and then
mm,
someone who's say I don't read a lot and it's like it's enjoyable that it's there's a story and then there's like a logical reason why the story is being told. Let's say there's like a linear
hmm
like timeline,
yeah,
and then but there's also like oh look there's a picture and like a workout and I can think about the workout and I can think about what it will be like and then I'm back to the to another story. You know, it's not like just a long slog of
yeah.
stories and it's not
You
just
feel
like
good for
picture after
you
picture.
feel good about yourself when you sit down. You're like, I read 30 pages today, and then
Yeah,
nobody has to know that five of the pages were
yeah.
pictures and five
But
were
yeah, it
just
was
like
rowing
workouts.
technique and you like I know like just from hearing you speak and stuff that you're not someone who like half-asses things
I
or
try not to.
you know like yeah. So like was it difficult to say like okay that's finished I'm happy with that or does your trust in Spencer account for a lot of that like because it must be hard to say I suppose like I imagine writing a story especially when you're going back that far and you're going back to you know you went all the way back to like you know weightlifting everything is in there so it's kind of like it must be hard to be like all of those details are definitely correct and I'm
Mm,
not going to like piss anyone off and then also be like I'm happy with all of those stories being told I'm happy with the way they're being told and then that's just me and I'm not that much of a perfectionist I'm not someone who's like you know all in on it on something when I'm doing it like apart from this probably but like you I know you are like that with pretty much everything so it's kind of like it must be hard to just say yep tick that's done I'm happy with that.
uh, yes and no. Um, so you know, it's like anything else. Making sure that you're working with people that you trust
Yeah.
is so important. Um, and you know, I've had the mistakes of putting trust in people that did not have my best interest in mind, and you pay the consequences for that. You know, in the instance where like you're opening up and being vulnerable to somebody and telling them, you know, whether it's stories or emotions, whatever it is, and they know it's terrible for you to share that information, but it gets them recognized. It gets their
Yeah.
name out there. So, you know, I've had enough of those mistakes where I was like, okay, you know, I'm making sure I trust the people that I work with, and Spencer is one of those people. So even if something, you know, came out the wrong way, he's not excited because now he has some clickbait stuff that's going to make
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
look bad and put him on the map. No, like that's not a concern. Um, but like anything, it can always be better. Always like anything. No, nothing is perfect. Nobody does anything perfectly. There's going to be mistakes and always room for improvement. It's always about progress, not perfection. And
Yeah.
and so with the book, it was the same thing of all right, there's only so many times I can proofread it. There's only so many people I can send the manuscript to and ask them to proofread it. And you know, and and you know, it just becomes a game of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we put in full effort. We genuinely did our best to make sure everything was perfect, correct, honest, everything. And and like anything, it's there's going to be mistakes that you find out after the fact, and so there's been a couple of those, you know, little typos here and there, just like there's a little piece that you know, just little errors. You know,
Mm.
there's two or three that people have pointed out, and and there's nothing you can do about it except correct it for the next time. So, we send it to the publisher of like, hey, this got found, little tweak here, a little tweak there. Um, and so, just always striving for perfection, knowing that I'm never going to reach it. But in the moment when a mistake gets or a typo gets printed into the book, there's no point dwelling on like, oh
Hmm.
shit, there's a mistake. It's like, okay, well, what steps can we take to make sure it's better for next time? So for the next run of books, there's the corrections got sent over, and you can't correct what's already out there. And thankfully, they're just little things, and one
Hmm.
involved somebody else's name, and so I did what I could. I was genuinely sorry, and I made sure that they heard that and that they understood that like, hey, it was nothing malicious. It was just the story got told, and it got missed. So making sure the intent is there, that the trust is there, and then when you make up, promptly admit it, and then make the correction. So uh,
Hmm.
thankfully, there's nothing big. There's no crazy misinformation. It was just little typos.
Yeah. Um, because I know when you were competing that you were like vehement about not sharing what you were doing,
Mhm.
and that there was like a level of secrecy around what you were doing. Is there any like trepidation around, say, writing a book, and then like obviously there's plans to write a second one, about being like, well, shit, how do I want to share things with people who aren't on the program? Like, is there a wariness about oversharing? Like,
No, no, like when I was competing, I genuinely viewed like basically all of my competitors as a threat. And and I realized early on that like everyone's going hard in the gym. Everyone's training their hardest. Um, and and so what can I do to separate myself? So, there were little things about my sleep schedule, my diet, my mental state, how I approach things, like, oh, excuse me, all these little things that I held very close to my chest because I didn't want to tell my competitors my game plan. Like I never posted what workouts I was doing because I look at like, do you think the whatever franchise is your favorite, do you think they're videotaping their practices and then putting it out to show off this new trick play that they
mm,
have or this new secret that they found? And so I took cues from other sports of like, I'm not going to share what I'm doing. Why would I help my competitors? I watch their stuff like a hawk to see what they're doing, and it's astonishing the amount of competitors that found this new cool tool that they're using in the gym, and they post about it to show off because they care about the Instagram likes, the comments. They want the praise of like, wow, you found a new secret. And I pay attention to that. And if I saw something that somebody else was doing that I thought was great, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see if it has room in my training. Um, but as soon as I was done, I was like, all right, well, yeah, like I want to help out. I want all rising tides, or what is it?
mm,
Tides rise all ships, or
yeah,
rising tides.
rising tides
Yeah.
rise all ship. Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, I'll share. I'll try to help out with people if um, I'm sure there's things in there for the competitors that they can grab something. Um, but I'm hoping more for like the everyday gym goer that's just trying to better themselves. If they can take um, little things that I apply to a very, very high level, you can apply those same things to your day to day and hopefully see some
Mm.
benefit.
Um, so I feel like the book and the other interviews you've done and like articles that have been written about you have, I suppose, like delved really deep into like loads of different like parts of your athletic career and your competitive career. So I'm not gonna like go through it like in a regimented fashion. I'm kind of going to dip in and out because I feel like you must be just kind of just weary about talking about all the specific things. So I try to pick things that maybe might not have been asked as regularly, or
Oh
like things that I
boy.
haven't heard you talk
Okay.
about
All right.
myself
What you
anyway.
got for me?
Um, so I was curious, like you started off with like weightlifting, and then you were kind of training weightlifting in a CrossFit gym, and then like started doing CrossFit competitions, that kind of stuff. Like when I found CrossFit first, my image of you was in a concrete basement on your own, like just I assume in silence with just the sound of your breath. And like, uh, at what point did it become that? And like, did something happen? Like, was it like a gradual shift of, was that always going on in the background and then it just became that became the foreground, we'll say? Or was there a point in time where you were just like, fuck this, I don't need anyone else? Like, I have the information that as in like, I don't need a group around me. I don't need, that kind of noise or whatever. I can get my programming and I can get my experts and I can just do it myself, like on
No, I
my
mean,
own.
I really, really do enjoy, like, when you have a good training partner, it's phenomenal. You're just feeding
Yeah.
off each other. Um, but I saw the silver lining of the other extreme of training only by yourself, of, you're never contingent on sharing equipment. You're not waiting on someone else's schedule. You're not having to, if the person you're training with is just having a bad day and they're not in it, it's going to negatively affect your training day. So, I saw the silver lining. I saw the benefit of both extremes of having top-notch training partner, but then I also saw the benefit of, like, training by myself. Your efficiency, your productivity is through the roof, and then you never have to cater to someone else's strengths or weaknesses. I'm always trying to train my weaknesses. And so when you have a training partner, you're trying to do equal parts, benefit for them, benefit for you. But if you're by yourself, you can be selfish. You get to have first dibs on all the equipment. You get to dictate what time you go to the gym, what time you leave, when, how far, how much time in between workouts, what movements you're doing, everything. Um, so I've done both extremes. I've trained with a coach with eyes on me full time and a full time training partner, and then I've done multiple seasons where, I trained by myself, no training partners, no coach, no nothing. And then I've also had it too where I used like basically like a plethora of training partners where not a single one of them is competitive in the overall scheme, but one is a phenomenal runner, one is a phenomenal weightlifter,
Yeah.
one has an incredible engine, and basically cherry picking, like, hey, do you want to squat with me? Hey, do you want to row with me? Hey, do you want to hit this metcon with me? Um, and so I've trained every different variety that you can throw out there basically, and there's there's pros and cons to them all. Uh, and so I found what I liked, what I didn't like, and I tried to, as the years progressed, try to modify my training setup to accommodate that.
And is that so when you were with, say, Shane and Tia, was that kind of the happy marriage of you could train together? It wasn't a male training partner, so I assume that made it a bit like easier when it's not a
Hmm.
direct competitor, I suppose. And then also you're kind of training together some days, not you're on your own other days. Was that kind of the perfect balance of all the things
Yeah,
together then?
I've had a couple different setups that I really enjoyed. Like when I trained, um, when I worked with Ben and Katrin, I would we would link up every couple weeks. I would take a trip down to
Yeah.
Boston, every couple weekends, and I found the benefit of that. Of I looked at it like, all right, I'm going to go to my lab and I'm going to try to, like, work on all these different things, and then every other weekend I show up to that gym. Catcher and I throw down, and I'm keeping notes on what did I really excel in, what did Catcher kick my ass in, what did um,
Hmm.
and then I would take that information, go back, modify my next 2 weeks of training, and then test it again. When training training with Tia, a lot of times it was, we'd meet up. Sometimes we'd meet up for morning and afternoon session. Other times we'd meet up for morning, and then I would do my afternoon session at home, whatever it was. But the common theme through my whole career is I found it very beneficial to train with top level females. Really enjoyed it because it's it's a good milestone of, like, all right, as long as we're finishing within ballpark of each other, I know I'm pushing the pace, I know I'm giving it my all,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it's not ever crushing your confidence if you get your ass kicked, and then it's like, oh my, it's every day's a competition, but it's a competition without high stakes, and so you can use it as a learning
Hmm.
experience, but it's not. crushing your mental side if you lose a couple workouts.
You mentioned Ben and Catherine there, and so when you were going up, like, because I know he was your coach, and then would you have considered him your coach at that time when you were going back and changing your training, or
So
just kind of someone that you worked
so
with, I
so
guess?
this is one thing that I've touched on a little bit, but never really gone too much in depth. Um, with people putting the stamp of coach, athlete, whatever it is, it comes down to your personal interpretation of what a coach is. So I came from
Yeah.
weightlifting and I had a very, very dedicated coach where 6 days a week, every training session, you did not lift the bar without his eyes on you. You did not complete a single lift without some form of critique. Um, and as soon as you went up in percentage and you had a lift that wasn't perfect or wasn't what you're looking for, pull back the weight, strip weight off, do it again. And so, that was my interpretation of a coach, of somebody that they wrote my programming, they had eyes on me every single day while they're doing it. It was an open line of communication. Um, the coach knows how I'm feeling physically, how I'm feeling mentally, what I'm dealing with in my day-to-day life. Like they know me like the back of my hand. Um, and so often you see, I would change up my terminology just for simplicity's sake of having to explain the dynamic of my relationship with whoever I was calling my coach. And through my CrossFit career, I've had people that I do consider my coach, and then I've had people that I'm like, they were a programmer. Um, I
Mm.
don't look at somebody that sends me an Excel spreadsheet as my coach. Like they're a programmer. They deserve praise. They're helping me. They're doing a great job of what they're doing. But my definition of what a coach is much different. And so, I mean,
Who would you consider
no,
a
I
coach
don't
then
want
that
to
you've
get
had?
into that because I mean, there's nothing productive that comes from that. Like, if I did work with somebody and they looked at me as their athlete and thought that I would talk to them about them
Yeah.
as their coach, um, I wouldn't want to, you know, I don't know, bring up anything otherwise. But I honestly don't think I've had a bad experience with somebody. I've worked with
Yeah.
people that, um, I saw the benefit of working with them. I thought like, okay, this is going to be great. But then I saw their interactions with other people, or I saw their track record with other people, and so I was like, okay, I see something that great that you have to offer, but I don't love everything else. So I'm just going to keep this
Mm.
relationship at an arm's length, um, so that nobody gets hurt. Um,
Mm.
and
Is it hard if you're working with someone, like, obviously taking into account that things obviously worked out pretty well for you through your career, like the decisions that you made, but like, is there any angst of like or fear of like, fuck, what if I'm making a wrong
of
call
course,
here, or like, do you just have to kind of go with it,
no, of
like?
course, there's always the fear of not doing the right thing. You start relying on someone for an information or looking at them as the professional. There's a lot of trust there of that what they're saying is correct and it's going to benefit you. Um, and I'm sure I've been in that situation before, but I think with dealing with anyone on any most topics, it's keeping an open line of communication and being able to look at things very objectively and take emotion out of it, and just being totally honest, keeping an open line of communication, not letting bad feelings or resentments build up. Um, as long as your intent is correct, it's um, not as likely that like things will go sour. If somebody, you can have the exact same situation, um, where it's kind of like a bad result, but if depending on the intent, it's like, oh, it's justified to get angry, or you're just like, don't worry about it, you didn't mean it, it's fine. Um, so with anyone that I've ever worked with, I tried to keep a very, very open line of communication so that uh, my expectations just the expectations of both people in the relationship are very clearly defined, and then you can kind of work together, play to each other's strengths and weaknesses, and to get the best result.
Yeah. Um, did you enjoy like training? Like, do you, because like it's a job, so I assume it's kind of different than say me going and training. But I know that you did like an internship or whatever with engineering, and that you kind of that seems to have made up your mind of like I'm going to like really go all in on CrossFit
Yeah,
and just see what happens. So obviously that's like an alternate universe there. You became an engineer and you just did like an hour of CrossFit a day, maybe
yeah,
to keep fit or whatever. And like instead, CrossFit became your job and training became your job and being coached and being programmed for and being in the basement on your own and being with groups and stuff. Like, do you enjoy, is it like, cause I just I can't figure enjoying it when it's so demanding. Well, cause I've heard you talk before about like no weddings, no bachelor parties, no
hmm
holidays, no like that. All your free time is condensed into your off season and only a segment
yeah.
of your off season because then you have to get ready for the next season. So like, did you enjoy your job before you retired?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like were there days that were tough? Were there painful moments? Were there, trials and tribulation? Like, yeah, of course. You're still living life as you're doing it. Um, but like I got to exercise for a living. So the stakes are high. There's a lot of pressure internally. There's a lot of pressure coming in from outside, outside opinions. You know, it's a competition. Like, people are trying to make their career by making you lose, and so the stakes are high. But I got to exercise for a living. It's fucking incredible. It's awesome. Where there are chunks of the day where I'm working on something that's frustrating, or I'm working on a weakness that's just crushing my self confidence. Yeah, absolutely. Um, but like the process itself, and like you surround yourself with people that you love and support you and that you enjoy spending your time with, and they're pushing you to reach limits that you didn't know you could reach. I wouldn't trade that shit for the world. It was incredible. I still love it. It's like, even now my arena has changed, but life's the same. We work our fingers to the bone. We work our asses off. We make sure that we're proud of the effort we're putting in. We make sure that we're applying the effort to something that we love. You know, what was it? It was like, applying effort to something that you don't care about is called stress. And it was like, oh, okay. So, like, yeah, there were high pressure scenarios, but they weren't all stress. A lot of them were just high pressure. You're just nervous. But yeah, I mean, dude, you got to spend all day in the gym. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of shit that can go wrong. Uh, but you make sure you surround yourself with people that don't care about the placement. They don't care if I get first or last. I'm coming home to the same hug. I'm coming home to the same love every day. So yeah, you can't ask for much more than that.
Hmm. Um, you retired after the 2020 games. And I was curious, like part of me thinks that it was a perfect send off because it was so unique and it's like never happened before, will probably hopefully never happen again, that kind of a
Yeah.
weird game scenario has to happen. Um but then I was also thinking of you at the games last year, watching it and watching the bright lights and the stadium and the like full crowd. Like, is there any kind of like, if when you're at the games last year, was there any kind of like, oh shit, it would have been nice if there was like thousands of people cheering when I won the last one?
No, no. I mean, my last year competing, it was definitely unique. It was unfortunate that was the atmosphere that we were in. We were very fortunate that we had people that were, you know, passionate about it, and didn't care about the obstacles that were put in our way. They made it happen. They gave us
Hmm.
an opportunity to show off our year. They made it work, and not a single person could justifiably argue if they didn't. You know, if they got to the date that they were planned on holding the competition, they're like, sorry, the state's not allowing us to gather, or it's not safe, whatever it is. Nobody can justifiably say that they did something wrong. But thankfully, they made it work. Was it ideal? No, fuck no, absolutely not. But they made it work, and they put on a great show doing it. Um,
Mm.
but for me, hitting the finish line immediately, oh, I just got goosebumps thinking about this. Hitting the finish line and going over, giving O'Keefe a hug. Um, that right there was very important to me. And then finding out that Sammy was there as well. And for the last event, they allowed each competitor to have a +1. And I don't think I saw Sammy before the event. I just saw her, or somebody pointed her out to me after. They're like, yeah, Sammy's over there. And so I remember, like, I turned to Dave, and like we weren't allowed to interact with him. And I turned to Dave and said, hey, can I go see Sammy? And he was like, yeah, make it quick. And so it ran over, and so I got to see, sorry, I got to see the two people that have been by my side every fucking year. O'Keefe was there with me my rookie year. I met
Mm.
Sammy, during the 2015 season. But the two people that have been there with me, not just for the good times, but for the bad ones. And they're the ones that when I wasn't strong enough, they propped me up to make me believe I was strong enough. And so I saw the two people there that have been on the whole journey with me, the two people there that knew that was my last event. So they knew I was retiring after that. Um, so that was the important part. That was what was important to me. Would it have been nice to hit the finish line in a big roaring crowd? Yeah, absolutely. But that's just playing a game of what if. And there's a million and one things that what if this was better and that was better and this was ideal.
Yeah.
But the people I love and care about were there, and so I got to share that moment with them.
Yeah, that's cool. I got goosebumps there as well. That was nice. Um, at what point did you know you were going to retire then? And at what point did you like verbalize it out loud to someone
Um,
else?
so I claimed my retirement uh, about probably 5 days after the 2019 games. Um,
Yeah. I heard this story from someone else,
yeah,
but I'm keen to
yeah,
hear
I
your
had
perspective
had
on
a
it.
phone call with with somebody, and they're asking like, "Hey, how you doing? What's your plan for next season?" Blah blah, kind of going on, and I remember saying like, I remember being caught off guard, and I remember where I was. I was sitting on my dock and just enjoying a cup of coffee, looking at the lake, and they're we had a full conversation. Then they're rattling on about next season, and I kind of was like, whoa, whoa, no, I'm done. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, no, dude, I'm retired. I'm done. And I remember like earlier that morning, maybe my dad asked me something. I was like, no, I'm packing her in. I'm good. And and he's and both these people were kind of like, what? Like they'd never had a hint of this. And and so and then my phone rings, maybe 10, 15 minutes later, and it's O'Keefe. And I can tell whenever somebody was around me that sensed something was wrong, they immediately text O'Keefe like, "Hey, call Matt. Something's wrong." And I can always tell when that happens because when I pick up and I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's like, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?"
Yeah.
And I
Let's all
and
just calm down.
exactly. And I remember like he he answered the call like that, and I was like, you just got a phone call, didn't you? And he goes, yeah, yeah, they called. They're a little bit concerned. Like, how you doing? And I was like, dude, I'm fucking great, man. I'm retired. And he and we had a good conversation, and it basically ended with him saying, like, I think you'll regret this decision. Like, I think you need to do one more for yourself. And obviously it wasn't like decided in that moment, but sat on it and like gave it some time, to figure it out. And I said, okay, fuck it, I'll do one more. And and then the that big decision of like, all right, I'm making some big life changes to accommodate one more season, and then getting near the end of it and finding out it's a possibility that it might not happen. And I was like, I'm sitting there like, motherfucker, if I made these life changes to compete for one more year, and then I get to the end, the finish line, and it's like, no, you have to do another one. I was like, no. So
And when you like, so you obviously, it was one more was the deal in your own head, I guess. So there was never a danger of, say, uh after, like, coming towards the games, be like, oh, maybe one more. Like, there was never a conversation afterwards. No one else said like, are you sure you don't want to do one more? Or you just kind of, it was always one more. So then once the one more was done, that was it,
yeah,
like no
yeah, like
comebacks.
the little while leading into the 2019 games, I was like, all right, this is the last one. Like finish it strong, and then the whole 2020 season was like, okay, like I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm excited for that light at the end of the tunnel, getting all my ducks in a row to make sure that I was busy and occupied and satisfied, not competing, that I just don't do well with idle hands. And so whether I'm putting
Hmm.
that effort and that work ethic towards becoming the best competitor possible or outside of the gym, I just need to make sure I'm occupied and satisfied doing something else. So getting all those ducks in a row ready for, all right, the day I'm done competing, I can jump into this new career and just be fully consumed by it.
Yeah, it's been like, so it's been actually remarkable to watch the transition from athlete to, um I don't know what to call it, because
Dude,
like you've
it's
got like, it's like an octopus or something. You've got so many different things on the go. The only thing that you don't have, that I was like, he'll definitely do that, is something to do with coffee. I was like, he'll definitely like build a roastery or something. That's going to be the first thing he does. And then when it was like the podium stuff, and I was like, well, pre-workout is caffeine in it, I guess I can count that as
yeah.
being correct. And then but like, so hard work pays off, which, as far as I know, is one of the few, what do you call it? Oh my god, what do you call it when the letters, when you take the first letter of each word?
Acronym? No.
Fuck, not anagram. Acro uh, is an acronym, is
Oh.
it? Yeah, I think. Fuck it, we'll go with acronym. Um, it's it's the only one that takes longer to say than the name of the thing. Anytime I say HWPO, I'm always in my head being like, it would have been faster for me to say the full
Nah,
word
nah.
because it's
When,
less syllables.
once you
Um,
integrate it into your daily life, HWPO, it just rolls off the tongue. But yeah, it
yeah,
takes some practice. Yeah,
or a hoopo. You could just do the sounds,
yeah,
the
yeah. We
phonetics.
contemplated like
Um,
we're like, all right, when do we, at what stage can we introduce a mascot? And I want to make a like HWPO hippo. You know, I feel like we could do some fun stuff with that.
yeah, like a jacked hippo. Um, was this always in the back of your head, or like, say, like when you knew you were retiring, you were setting things up to, okay, I want to be busy, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then you had all these cards that you kept close to your chest, I guess, and you knew all the programming that you built up, and all the, you kind of had like a file of facts in your head of all the different things. And like, was this part of the plan to be like, okay, I'm going to release a program and that'll keep me busy, and then it grew legs?
Yeah.
Or was it a case that you were like, fuck this, I'm going to be a coach, I'm going to, like, I'm curious as to what plan you had and how much was like just kind of running as it evolved?
Um. So once I like knew, all right, competitive career is done, I'm moving on to other things. Um, I would say I probably had 6 projects lined up immediately. Um, things that I was like, all right, the day I'm done competing, I can start working on these. And and so I decided like, all right, I'm going to take 2 of them, pursue them, feel them out, whether they're success, failure, whatever it is, or get them set, get the ball rolling, and then grab another project. Um, and and I said, when out of the 6 projects, I was like, all right, I'm probably gonna have one here that will take off a little bit more than I was expecting. I'm probably going to have four that are just mediocre, don't really pull on any strings of passion, and they'll kind of fall to the wayside, they'll dwindle out. And then I'm sure I'll have one that is just an absolute belly flop failure. And I was completely okay with it. I was like, no, like I'm pursuing new things. Why would I expect everything to go smoothly? Like, no, I'm going I'm going to fuck up. That is a guarantee. But it's just like my competitive career. I'm going to fuck up on things, but it's like, all right, let's take that mistake and learn from it. Go back to the drawing board and get better at it. And so the first two things that I kind of took off the shelf and started pursuing um, took off more than I was anticipating, and I was like, ah, shit. Like I was kind of planning on like maybe moving on with these two things and then taking on something else, and ended up just all the projects. No, that's a lie. Most of the projects ended up getting bigger and better than I anticipated and required a lot more effort. But they also were producing results that I wanted to put more effort in. And so yeah, from what I was expecting my day to day to look like to what it is very, very different. Um, but it's all learning experiences. It's just before I dictated my workday by how much energy I had, and I always ran out of energy. I never ran out of time. And now it's the exact opposite. Like when you work for yourself and you work from
Yeah.
home, anywhere your laptop is and you have internet, you can be working. So it's
Yeah.
it's eyes open to eyes closed every day.
Um, like, was the plan? Because like having watched you in interviews and stuff, and watched you talk about like being an athlete, and like I guess you were always kind of like vague or whatever about what your plans for
Yeah.
after you finished competing. You were never very like, this is what I'm going to do. But I think in my head anyway, being a specific athlete's coach isn't something that I would have
No.
picked
No,
out
I
of like
I
personal
actively said I wouldn't
aspirations.
coach. Um,
Yeah. So when did that change? Was there a moment that changed it, or was it just like, was it because of who you met,
Yeah,
or how did that
yeah,
happen?
that one was so obviously like so Jason Hopper was the first, and he didn't give me much of a say in the matter. I met him before the games and stayed in contact with him leading up and through the games, but had no coaching with him. And then it was after he basically didn't ask. He just kept hounding me of like, he's like, you're going to coach me. You're going to coach me. You're going to coach me. And so I was finally like, Jesus Christ, fine, uh, and then I honestly don't really remember how the specifics of working with Mal came into place. I just know there was a weekend where I think she may have been in Boston, and I had a whole group from Boston come up to Vermont just to hang out. Some of it was work, but mostly just hanging out. But like there were, I think I had 12 or 13 people here, and everyone just training, hanging out, eating good food, and I just saw the potential that Mal had, and how receptive she was to critiques and how eager she was to she was just a sponge, and it was such a natural fit. Her and I just click really, really well, and so that's kind of how that came to be, but. Yeah, I actively said like, no, I'll never coach. And even with programming, I didn't know, like I had never done it before, so I didn't know if I would enjoy it. And almost immediately, like I put out the first chunk of programming, and I put my spin on it, with the members, and was almost immediately like, oh, okay, I want to double down on this. And so where it started as like a one man operation, where I'm I was doing everything for the program to realize like, all right, this is no longer manageable as a one man operation. I need to bring in a support staff and people to help contribute, bring in other points of view, to help build this thing. And so it was a combination of my enjoyment level of it. It was received really well. People, the ones that I've had contact with love it. And so I was like, okay, like this is something that I want to like double down on and go all in. And so kind of the same as coaching. You know, when I started dipping my toe in, I was like, we'll see how I like this. I'm not making any crazy commitments. And now it's like, okay, I'm going all in and trying to provide for our athletes an atmosphere and resources that are second to none. So I'm really excited for this season, but then once we're given some more time to build what we're trying to build, I'm fucking psyched about it.
When you talk about Bill, are you talking about more than two games level athletes, or well, I suppose three with Jake hopefully this year? Are you talking about more than three athletes? Or are you talking about the
Uh,
brand itself?
no, I want to go. I want quality, not quantity. You know, like
Yeah,
anything I do, if my name is associated with it, I want to make sure that it is my full 100% best effort. And you know, I want to be held responsible. If my name's associated with something, I want it to reflect that. Um, and so I just want to provide the environment that I tried to have my whole career of like basically looking at it like I have this lab that I go to and nobody knows what I'm doing in there. You know, nobody, I just want to show up at competition and I want the narrative to be like, what is he doing? Like he's winning and he doesn't post about anything and we don't know what resources, we don't know what he's doing. Um, but it's something good. And so I want to try to provide that for my athletes of giving them, um, you know, the gym, the resources, every accommodation possible to set themselves up for success. But make sure that it's theirs. I want to avoid that
mm.
a gym getting diluted because you know you have a couple athletes come out of that gym and then everyone thinks that that location is the secret sauce and then there's this huge migration and everyone goes there and then the people that originally made that beautiful atmosphere that sculpted athletes, it's now ruined because there's just too many people. You know, the resources are now spread too thin, and it's time management, equipment management, all these things, and 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 so I just want to give those resources to the athletes, and I want to give them everything as long as they're reflecting that. So number one thing I keep saying to the people I work with, like if you give me your full effort, I will give you my full effort. As long as I see it being reflected, there's no limitation on what I'll try to give you.
Okay, so you talk about building. You actually no, never mind. Okay, I'll start now. Right, so you talk about you that you did everything yourself, and that you were kind of you had all these hats that you had to put on, and that you had to do this and then do that, and then there was so much different things that you had to do, and then you become now we're in this position where you've got like the best hair in CrossFit.
Yeah.
Like Jake is there, he's coaching
Hmm.
Jason, he's helping with the program and stuff. You've got Eric doing like
Yeah.
like phenomenal job with the media and stuff. You've got like Sammy's obviously like a fantastic head and her shoulders at all the experience she's built up and the different jobs she's had and stuff. And now you've got Matt coming on as CEO, who I think if you asked anyone 6 days ago was going to be the new CEO of
I know,
CrossFit.
right? Yeah. The
So
timing worked out to frame it up pretty good.
yeah. What does he bring in your? I mean, first of all, it must be absolutely fucking amazing for you who, like you mentioned, like you got emotional talking about him earlier on about how he was there from day one, and now you have this perfect full circle moment where you can bring him in, and it's like this perfect like it was all worth it,
Yeah.
like to have this like amazing moment. It must be just incredible. But like, what is it? What are the qualities that he has that you're bringing in, saying like this is exactly what HWPO
Yeah.
needs?
So one thing I want to backtrack a little bit. Like when I was saying like I did everything, nothing in my CrossFit career was done solo. When I was talking about the programming, it was like I did everything in the sense of like I had to decide, all right, what's the focus, what's the time frame, and then doing the whole program all through at once. But then once I handed it off, there were other people developing the app and doing all the data entry.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah,
So I don't want to take anything away from people that have helped me along the way. Like uh,
yeah.
I'm at where I'm at today because I had a phenomenal team that crushed. Um, but I mean, O'Keefe coming on, I mean, it's just full circle. He was the first person that helped me in my career in terms of like on the business side of things. He was just a stranger that he owned a clothing brand that wanted to sponsor me, and then he, to do me a favor, was reading other contracts just to help out. And then we've all seen what he did. He started helping out other athletes because he realized there was no representation for CrossFit athletes in the space, and that athletes were getting taken advantage of really, really badly. And so he started doing that just to help, and then turned that into a career. Started doing it not just for athletes, but for brands. And then other brands started using him as a resource just for consulting. And then he went over to, was the president of Loud and Live Sports, had all these competitions, blew them up to levels that we see today.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's it's really special just bringing him in. He's incredible at what he does. He's incredible at building phenomenal things. Um, he was the first person to tell me that I could win the world championships. And at the time I was like, dude, you're fucking crazy. Like, there's no way. Um, but he's helped me along the way. He's been in the trenches with me. Um, and
Oh, we all saw him lift you into an ice bath ass first
dude,
in the Alien documentary. So
yeah. I mean, it's the stuff that the public sees, but then the stuff that's special to me is the stuff that the public doesn't see. It's the stuff that doesn't get talked about openly. It's the bad times, it's the sad times, it's the times that we thought it was all crumbling to an end. Um, so to be able to see what he's built on his own, um, just our time spent together. We've traveled the world together. We've been through some of the best experiences, the worst experiences together, but we helped each other. So just to continue that journey, but now it's just a different venue. Instead of him supporting me while I'm competing, we're supporting each other and trying to provide the best business for the people that are in our community. He's just incredibly business savvy. He's incredible at networking and just being able to look 10 steps ahead instead of just like the result of the direct actions that are happening now. He's looking big picture and things that he'll throw ideas at me, and I'm like, dude, you're out of your fucking mind. And then a week later, it's like starting to get put together. And I'm like, oh my God, how did you do that? So um, yeah, I'm excited. It was just funny, like with the whole leadership change going on at CrossFit, and then O'Keefe announcing that he was leaving his current gig, and the few of us knew what was happening, but I'm like, man, this is getting teed up to look crazy.
yeah. Yeah, because even like I was messaging a few people being like, surely not, like, and then you could see the comments on all like the chalk up stuff and all that was like, Keith is CEO and Fraser is the new Castro, and it's just like, I mean, surely not. But yeah, the timing and the fact that I remember Keith was like, oh, I'm going to announce something like next week, and then like all week and nothing came, and it was like, well, fuck, maybe that's why he didn't announce it.
Yeah.
It's just the vacuum left like so much time for people to like
Yeah.
speculate and stuff. So yeah, that was fun. Um, okay, I was curious as well about you. So you were at the games last year. You were at Wadapalooza. That was your most recent outing, I guess. And we all saw you being thrown in at the deep end by Dylan, demonstrating your handstand walks and stuff. On the last day.
Oh no, that wasn't on Dylan. That was on me.
Oh
Yeah,
really?
just because I know, I've been fortunate to, experience stuff like that from a competitor standpoint, but then I've seen it enough. I see the room for error when it's like changes happening on the fly from a
Yeah,
situation
yeah.
that no one has control over. And then like you see the huddle of judges, and it's like one person's talking. They don't have a microphone. It's not being dictated and put into print. It's like it's on the fly, and there's just a lot of room for error. Just like, and somebody's interpretation, like when Dylan says something of how the workout is, there's room for interpretation on things when it's being rushed like that. And so I literally stepped up. I grabbed O'Keefe. I was like, "Hey, do you want me to demo this thing so that there's no room for error? I will do the workout verbatim, um, just so." I literally looked at it. I was trying to help out the competitors of like, um, you know,
Eradicating confusion, I
exactly,
guess.
just trying to remove any opinion or self-interpretation of what the workout is meant to be. Um, and so I was just like, all right, if I can save a couple errors for an athlete, I'm all for. I'm here. Like, let me just do it. It was a short sprint workout, and I didn't. Yeah, I didn't kill myself doing it. It was just like, all right, like if I can help ease this process of these last minute changes, I'm all here.
Do you enjoy going to those events not as a competitor, or is it kind of
Oh, I
like,
fucking love it.
is there is there any angst of like, oh man, I miss the floor, I
No,
miss like being out
no,
there?
not even, not a hair. When I make a decision, most times it's final.
Yeah.
Um, I try to I do my best to never make a sporadic decision. Um, even when I think like, okay, this is what I want to do, I'll I'll wait, a week, a month, 6 months. Like it's as simple as like even like with making a big purchase. Um, Depending on what day of the week you catch me on, I might want to buy something different, but then, depending on the magnitude of the purchase, it's like, all right, if I still want this same amount in 6 months, I'll purchase it. I'll treat myself. I'll make it happen. Um,
I'm the exact same. Exact same. Except instead of 6 months, it's like six
yeah.
seconds. But exact same mentality.
Uh,
It's like, oh, I better wait and see if I want this. Fuck it, I still
yeah.
want it.
Yeah. So I try to do that. Try to do that with most things, so that when I make a decision, I know, all right, this has substance to it. It has meaning. It is actually what I want. Um, and so when I go to a competition, it's nothing but excitement for my friends still competing. It's nothing but excitement of just being a pure spectator, and watching these guys give it their all. Um, yeah, there's
Does it get any less weird seeing, like if there's a hard work pays off activation or a podium activation, does it get any less weird seeing a queue of like hundreds of people who are just like, I just want to stand beside you for like six
no,
seconds?
it's it's pretty
Does that get normal?
no, it's pretty strange. Yeah, because I don't view myself like that whatsoever. Of like, oh, you definitely want a picture with me. It's like, no, like I, you know, yeah, it's a very odd feeling. But
Yeah.
I try to not take it lightly. And different people like me for different reasons. And so, if there's something that I can contribute to somebody to help them through, an obstacle that they're going over at the time, or if they're just trying to get better at competing, or, there's people that come to me that, you know, obviously most people know me for what I did on the competition floor, and they find inspiration from something revolving around that. But then you get people that are dealing with a back injury, and they heard that I did it, and so, that's the reason they like me. That's what relates to them. Students that are like, I'm currently pursuing a college degree, and I'm trying to compete, and I thought it was impossible, then I found out you did it. Like, what tips and tricks do you have? So whatever the reason is, I try to take it seriously, because that's what's important to that person at that moment, and so I try to just provide benefit to them however I can, whether that's, taking a picture with them so that they can set it as the background of their phone and always have that inspiration, or if it's taking 10 minutes and having a conversation with them and helping them dissect a life problem that they're dealing with that I have dealt with, whatever it is. if I can be a benefit to somebody, I'm more than happy to, but it is still very, very odd to me that I'm that person.
Yeah, I remember talking to Jake when he was on, and he was like, "It's so weird being like kind of slightly known, but then being someone with Matt." He was like, "It's really fucking weird because you're just a nobody. There's like, yeah, shut up, just take our picture." Like he was like, "It's really weird scenario." Um, well, look, we'll finish with a quick fire. So they're mainly either or. So row or run,
Run.
snatch or clean,
Snatch.
a dumbbell or
Barbell.
barbell, gymnastics or cardio,
Cardio.
athlete you'd most like to work with.
In what sense? Coaching or learning?
Either, both, or one of each.
Uh, I mean, coaching, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now. Um, I mean, through my whole career, there were certain athletes from other sports that I really, really wanted to try to have a sit down with and pick their brain on certain
Mm,
things. Um, but yeah, none that can pop into my head. I try to abide by never meet your heroes type situation.
yeah,
But the few that I have, I've genuinely enjoyed doing. But yeah, I try to limit that.
yeah. Um, Jake or Hopper? No, you don't have to answer that. We all know it's Jake. Um, look, thanks a million for coming on. It's been fantastic to talk. It's funny that you say never meet your heroes. Like this is, I was nervous before we started, but it's one of the most enjoyable conversations I have. I think it's no surprise that you're surrounding yourself with such a good group and that things are working so well. It doesn't surprise me at all that you're as successful as you were in your athletic career and that you're continuing that off the floor, because I mean there's obviously a consistent trait that you have, and it's, I think, similar to what and I always refer to it, what O'Keefe says of do the right things for the
Yeah.
right people for the right reasons, and it's paying off, and the hard work is paying off as well. So yeah, thanks a million for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's been great getting to talk to you, and we should do it again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me, man. Yeah, like I've been listening to your podcast for years. You do a phenomenal job. Like you grab great people. You're great at what you do. So I'm glad I
Thank
get to
you.
join the list of people who've been on.
Yeah, that's great. um I wasn't expecting that. That's cool, thanks.